This is a video on factoring. Okay, so if you've been following along, the first prep video we did was expanding binomials. So that's where we took two brackets with a binomial in each of them, and we expanded them to get rid of the brackets. That was our goal. So we started with this guy, and we multiplied everything in the second bracket by that guy. So we ended up with x squared minus 2x, and then we moved on to the next term, and we multiplied everything in the second bracket by that term. So we got 3x minus 6, and then we collected our like terms, which gave us x squared plus x minus 6. Okay, so in this video, we're doing something called factoring, which is basically the opposite of expanding. So now we're going to take an expression and we're going to turn it back into this. It's like we're condensing it into a bunch of brackets if possible. So let's just do this one because we already know the answer to it, but I'll kind of just show you a few ways to do this. So there's like a bunch of different strategies for factoring, but I think it's nice to see the pattern. So if you have x squared plus 6x minus 6, so just some observations we can make. I'm just gonna get rid of these. Okay, I don't even know how to erase. What? Okay, sorry. Or we'll just leave those lines. Okay, figured it out. Okay, so some observations are, if you check out the last term, the minus 6, and you look at your brackets, you can see that the last terms in the brackets, positive 3 and minus 6, you can see that from when we were expanding them, you can see that that's where the minus 6 came from, positive 3 minus 2. That's how we got the minus 6 there. So basically that's something to think about when you're trying to factor this. You look at the last term and try to figure out what multiplies to that term, because that's what's going to go in the ends of your brackets. So like kind of the first step would be to find out what multiplies to this. So you're kind of trying to figure out, okay, what multiplies to 6, because that's what's going to go in the ends of your brackets. So when we already know the answer to this, but like when you're doing this, you're thinking like, okay, so maybe it's like minus 2 and positive 3, maybe. Or maybe it's minus 3 and positive 2. Like, you don't know, both of those make minus 6. Or maybe it's negative 6 and positive 1. Like, there's so many options. So then we need another thing. So this middle term actually tells us, like that's where these guys came from. So what we actually want to do is like add these terms together, because that's what ends up happening, right? We end up doing like x times negative 2 is negative 2x, and 3 times x is 3x, and then we end up adding those terms together. So we're actually, since that's what happens, we end up like adding those terms or subtracting those terms. We're actually looking to figure out what adds to give us the middle term. So the last term is what multiplies, and then this middle guy is, we're trying to find something that adds to that. So when we're coming up with the brackets, since we're starting with an x squared term, we're actually going to put it in the front of both brackets, because it's the same as the minus 6. We're looking for something that multiplies to it. So x times x is x squared. So that's got to be what's in the front of the brackets. That's our only option. And then the minus 6, we talked about, it could be negative 2 and positive 3. It could be negative 3 and positive 2. It could be negative 6 and positive 1, or it could be negative 1 and positive 6. Like all of these options multiply to give us negative 6. But only one of those options will add to give us positive 1. Because if you add these guys together, they'll give you 5. If you add these guys together, that'll give you -5. Okay, so as you can see, this guy adds up to 1, which is what our middle term is. So that's why we're going to use these terms right here. So we pop the -2 and the +3 into the brackets. And if you're not sure if that works, you can just expand it out like we already learned how to do and then double check it. Okay, let's try another one that we don't already know the answer to. Okay, here we go. So x squared plus, let's just do an easy one, 7x plus 10. Okay, so it's a trinomial, which means it has 3 terms. The first term is an x squared term, the second term is just an x, and the third term is just a constant. So we're trying to put it into a set of 2 brackets to make it a binomial. That's our goal. So we want to put it into the 2 brackets. So like we just said in the previous example, we know we're going to stick an x in the front of both brackets because we know that when we expand this binomial, x times x will give us that x squared term. So we definitely want that to be there. And then we know that the 10 at the end comes from multiplying the 2 last terms. So things that multiply to 10 would be 5 times 2 or 10 times 1. So we got those 2 options. So in the backs of the brackets, there could be a 10 and a 1 or a 5 and a 2. But then we figured out that the middle term is what it has to add up to. So then we just look at our numbers, 5 and 2. Can that make 7? Sure can. So we put +2 and +5 in both of those brackets. And then if we're not really sure, like, ooh, does that work? Just write it off to the side and try your expanding binomial skills. X times x is x squared, x times 2 is 2x, 5 times x is 5x, and 5 times 2 is 10. And when we add it up, we get x squared plus 7x plus 10. Check, it works. So these are usually called simple trinomials. They are kind of simple. There's no coefficient in front of the x squared. Well, there is, but it's just a 1. So when there is something else there, like a 2, 3, 4, 17, -100, then it gets a little harder. So let's try another simple one. So say we had x squared minus 9x minus 20 plus 20. Let's do plus 20. Yeah. Okay, so say that's our binomial, our trinomial. 3 terms, trinomial. And we want to put it into a set of brackets. So we want to factor it. So there's our brackets. So we know right off the bat, since x squared is our first term, we're going to start with an x in the front of both brackets. And then we know our last term is a +20. So then we just start thinking of what multiplies to +20. 5 times 4, 20 times 1, 10 times 2. And if you're really bad at figuring out what multiplies to a number, just start at like 1 times itself and then just work up. Then 2 times 10, 3 times, that's not going to be good, 4 times 5. And then you've hit all your possibilities. Okay, so then here's something else. Since the middle term's a negative number, so we got to get something that's going to add to a negative number. So it's likely that these guys are both going to be negative numbers. So in order to multiply to a positive number, the numbers are either going to have to be both positive or both negative. So I'm betting that they're going to be both negative because in order to add to a negative number, we're going to need some kind of negative in there. So if we make all of our options negative, then we can quickly just go down the row and see -5 minus 4 is going to give us the -9 that we're looking for. That's going to give us -21, and that's going to give us -12, which we don't want. So these are the guys we want. So let me just pop a -5 and a -4 in the bracket. Okay, so that's it. And if you want to check it, you just expand the binomial and make sure it works. Okay, so that is called factoring, and all we covered in this video were simple trinomials. You can factor a whole bunch of different expressions. So all I did in this video was simple trinomials, which means they're 3 terms and they're usually starting with an x squared. So let's say we write a trinomial as ax squared plus bx plus c. And in a simple trinomial case, a is always equal to 1. So x squared plus bx plus c is the only thing I taught in this video. The next video is going to be complex ones.